So I'm Eric Vance. I'm the director of LISA. It's the Laboratory for Interdisciplinary Statistical Analysis at Virginia Tech. And I'm here by invitation from Dr. Ed Jones. Thank you for that. And it looks like we have about 14 students in the class, and then three students who are at a distance, four. So I'm going to be talking about 5 things if I have time. If I don't have time, then I'll just do the 4 things. But between each of those things, there will be time for questions. So the first thing I'm going to cover is the attitude that we teach that leads to effective collaborations. The second thing is a process, which we call the QQQ process, or the qualitative, quantitative, qualitative process. And then a structure, the power structure for having collaboration meetings. That's the third thing I want to talk about. The fourth thing is video coaching and feedback sessions. So this is how you can, at home with some friends, improve your own statistical collaboration skills. And then if there's any time, I'll just briefly talk about LISA 2020, which was what my seminar this morning was about. So I'm going to start with the handout that says LISA Collaborative Attitude and QQQ Process. And so I'll try to go through this quickly. So I've decided that there's a fundamental law of statistical collaboration. And it is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And this came from Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think it works perfectly for statistical collaboration. So first, seek to understand their problems. Okay, so I need to show this onto the other monitor.
Because I selected that one. You're saying that it's not coming across? Okay.
Oh yeah, it says you are sharing this monitor.
There we go. 1, 2. Does that look better? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, great. So the attitude is first to understand as much about the project and the research as possible, and then figure out the statistics, and then make sure that your solution, your statistics, are understood by your client or by your collaborator, by the researcher or business person that you're working with. I'm going to be going through these things really quickly. Like in my class at Virginia Tech, we spend multiple class periods on these topics, but I'm just going to give it everything all at once. So these are all handouts, so you should be able, at some point, if you don't have them now, you should be able to get them in the future. So moving to working definition, I consider statistical consulting to be helping a client answer a statistical question, whereas statistical collaboration is helping a client answer a research or business question. And there's an important change in attitude where you're not thinking about what statistics question can I solve. I listen to the client, but I can't understand, I can't figure out their statistics question. You're listening for their research problem or their business problem, and then figuring out how to use statistics to solve that research or business problem. A very quick story is that there's a movie, I always get it confused, but it's Land of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead. It's a zombie movie, and these zombies are almost indestructible. They're really They're killing all the humans, but they have one weakness, and the weakness is fireworks. So the zombies, whenever they see a fireworks, they, their head shoots up, and they just are stare transfixedly into the sky at the fireworks. And meanwhile, the humans can come and chop off their heads, or shoot them with bazookas and stuff like that. I see this similar type of behavior with beginning statistics students when they're in a meeting with the client. They're asking good questions about what their research is, and then the first time that a client mentions any statistics term, the student just locks in on the statistics and basically becomes a zombie and just wants to talk about statistics from then on. And so what I'm saying is, don't be a zombie. Keep your mind on the research problem that you're trying to solve, and don't get distracted too early by any of the statistics that the client might throw out at you. Okay. Statisticians, collaborative statisticians, can be effective in all phases of research. So here, there's a diagram on the screen about what I consider 5 phases of research. And so typically, all researchers start with some kind of understanding of the world, and then they want to learn more. So they have some research questions, and so they design experiments or studies to answer those research questions. And from those experiments come data, and then it's after data are collected where they bring in a statistician because they try to analyze the data but it didn't work, or something went wrong, and so then the statistician becomes involved. And statistician can help visualize the data or analyze with statistical models to come up with some kind of some knowledge from the data. But then the knowledge really needs to be interpreted. So you might have statistical output, that's some knowledge, but it needs to be translated back into understanding. And so in some cases, now that the researcher knows more about a project or a problem, they'll design another experiment, and start the circle again, or hopefully they can make scientifically sound decisions. They can use that understanding to solve problems and make decisions. Now, statisticians are important in all of these aspects, especially, well, in all of them. And so as collaborative statisticians, we try to get involved in this part, the designing the experiment or the research study. And then that ends up leading to much higher quality data, which is easier to analyze and easier to interpret. So now I'm going to pause for questions, because that was about the attitude of collaboration. Are there any questions in the room or online? And if there are questions online, how would I know?
There's a thing that says chat, so they can post questions that board.
Okay. And if you guys, that's easy. Are there any questions from the people in the room? Okay, now I'm going to move on to what we call the QQQ process. So this is, you can use the qualitative, quantitative, qualitative process when thinking about and solving all applied statistics problems. So there are basically 3 components to every problem, applied statistics problem. The first Q is qualitative. We call it Q1. So it's basically, what is the research or business question? What is bringing your client in to talk to you as a statistician? And not just, it's not just what's their statistics question, but what are they trying to accomplish using statistics? What do they really care about? What do they really want to know? So what are the clients trying to do? What do they want to know? What data can answer those questions? Then separately, what data do the clients have? How were those data collected? Which statistical techniques applied to the data will provide results that could be interpreted as answers to the research or business questions? How will the clients actually use the results after the problem is all solved? How complicated or sophisticated of statistical technique will the clients be able to use and explain to their stakeholders? So what will they be able to explain to their advisor, their peers, their boss, that kind of thing? These are all qualitative questions that you should answer first. So once you have a really good understanding of what the research or business question is and how the answers will be used and how the data were collected, what they are, then you can translate that into statistics. And then the second Q, Q2, is quantitative. This is applying statistical techniques to quantitatively analyze your data. Right? And this is what you learn in most of your other courses, this Q2 part. So once you've analyzed the data, the last part is basically it's qualitative again. It's what is the answer to the original question. You spend a lot of time figuring out the original question. Now you'll spend the time trying to make your statistics understandably, answer the research question. So qualitatively, what do the results mean? What are the answers to the client's questions? How can we visually display the data? And how can we communicate the results of the analysis? What assumptions did we make in the analysis? How can the client explain these results to their advisor, boss, or peers? And basically, you use statistics to tell the story of the data and answer the research or business questions. That's what we call the QQQ process. Are there any questions about this? And I'm going to pause for like 30 seconds. It's going to be an uncomfortably long pause so that if anybody has questions, you'll ask them. Okay, so your question from Bryce in the room is how important is it to meet with the client in person as opposed to using Google Hangout or Skype or some kind of WebEx or whatever it is that you guys use? I think it's much more important to be able to see the client, whether it's on video or in person. Okay, the answer is video is almost as good as in person. That's what I think. If I'm trying to explain, if I'm trying to help a client actually do some statistics in a software package, the video is even better than in person because I can see them kind of like, if they're not sharing their screen, but I had a client once where I was explaining how to do something in JUMP, and I could see her like, clicking on things and then being like, okay, then I knew I could see her, have a nice, a smile. So that meant that we could go to the next topic. At one point she was like kind of frowning, and so I knew that I needed to back up and re-explain. So it's not. Video is pretty much almost as good. Okay, so the question from Dr. Jones, how long would each of these three components of the QQQ process take? I think an initial meeting, which would be maybe an hour long, you'll definitely be able to figure out all of Q1. And then you can go, outside of the meeting, then do Q2, the quantitative statistics, which, depending on the problem, could be done in the meeting. Maybe it's something that you could do quickly in 5 or 10 minutes, or it could take much longer. Basically, in Lisa, we often meet with clients for, say, 2 to 3 meetings. So the first meeting will be Q1, and these meetings are 1 hour long. First meeting is Q1, and starting to think about Q2, and like what quantitative things would possibly work, and then doing, maybe a couple hours after the meeting, doing the statistics, and then having a second meeting where then for that hour they do Q3, or possibly they require more questions to figure out, oh wait, how are these data collected again? Or some of that follow-up can be done by email. So I would say I'm just going to say 60 minutes on Q1, 2 hours on Q2, and 40 minutes on Q3. But I'm just throwing things out. These are just kind of random. Are there other questions? So the question is, how much background should you have on the subject of the client, like the client's research problem? So I suggest, so in Lisa, we always get a client request form where the client will describe their project, in a paragraph or a couple sentences. And sometimes that's great. Sometimes it's completely misleading and not useful at all. But what I advise all my students to do is to know every term that's in that. So if they're talking about some kind of genetic testing thing, then you look up on Wikipedia, what does this term mean? So make sure you're familiar with all the terms in the initial client request. And then about how much background do you need, it's variable. I am a person who, I think that I can pick things up quickly, and I can make connections. So the more clients that I've met with, I can learn something new, but relate it to a project that I worked on 2 years ago. And so, the more experience you get, the quicker you'll be able to pick up these things. One thing you might do is ask the client, all right, so you're explaining this, and this is how much I understand of what your research is. And I know I don't know all of it, but is this correct? And, do I need to know this part that I don't understand? And then maybe the client will say, no, well, probably not. Or, yes, actually, that's not relevant to this particular problem. They could say that you have a good understanding. But, yeah, okay. The answer is I don't know, and I can't really. It's all different projects and different people. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to move on to the power structure. So this is something that I basically teach over a couple weeks, and we practice each of the aspects of this power structure. So we won't have the time for that, but I'll say that this power structure is really effective for structuring a meeting, for knowing what you need to do, and for not forgetting, and for really getting off on the right foot with the client, and having a collaborative relationship with the client. So the power structure came from Doug Zahn, and he is a retired faculty member from Florida State. He is writing a book that he's self-publishing, and it should come out in January of 2015. And so the power structure is the first third of his book. And I recommend it. I've used his book in the draft form for the past 3 years, and our students have used it and given him feedback. So let me go through the power structure. It stands for prepare, open, work, and reflect. So 5 components to a meeting. So the first one is prepare, which means that you should mentally and physically prepare for the meeting. So review the materials that the client sent you. Make sure the meeting room is welcoming. You know, if you're doing it, make sure you have your Google Hangout set up, you know, so you don't have surprises with technology. If you need a glass of water, get a glass of water, that kind of thing. Prepare yourself. Also, you know, if you want to like center yourself, make sure you're not thinking about the homework assignment that's due, you know, the next day, that you're actually there to focus on the client. And it's also good, you should have a plan for the meeting. So, you know, this handout, you can actually bring this handout to a meeting, and, you know, there's your plan, where you're going to start off with prepare, you do that, then the client comes in, and you open the meeting. So this is the O for the power structure. So introduce yourself, smile, you know, greet the client, shake hands, make eye contact, help the client feel comfortable. And then I like to go immediately into the time conversation, which is you ask, you know, how much time the client has available for this meeting. If you already have a time set, an end time, and you say, you know, we've scheduled this class from 4 to 5 p.m. Does that time still work for everybody? So you ask the client, you know, does it still work to meet until 5 p.m.? And we've had I wish I could show you the video, but it's not on my computer. We have a video of one of our Lisa statistical collaborators asking the client, you know, does it still work for you to meet from, you know, until noon today? And then the client's like, yeah, well, I have to feed the meter in 35 minutes. I have to feed the parking meter in 35 minutes, but I think we can get it done by then. So this was like, whoa, an eye-opening experience for the collaborator, because, you know, if you think that you have 60 minutes to solve a problem, and the client is going to, you know, run out the door in 35 minutes, you know, you need to figure that out at the beginning of the meeting. You can just imagine what's happening if you never talk about any of the time, where if there's like 10 minutes left, the client is like, okay, if I leave now, I can walk, and I can go put coin in my meter, and I won't get a parking ticket. You know, and then they're like 5 minutes, okay, now I can run. They're not listening, they're not focused on the statistics. And then it's like, oh, well, are they going to give me a ticket? I mean, they're not focused on the statistics. So open every meeting with a time conversation, and check, you know, ask if the time still works for them, and if there's a possibility of going over, because I often have meetings where I ask them if they can, you know, do it for an hour and a half, and they say yes, and we get it finished in 90 minutes. Whereas if we had stopped after 60 minutes, we would have had to schedule a second meeting to get everything done. So I can just knock it out in an hour and a half. So then right after the time conversation, you could say, great, so in the 55 minutes that we have left for today's meeting, what would you like to accomplish? So this is what we call the wanted conversation. You should ask what your client wants to accomplish during this meeting. You know, because they have some specific reason that they wanted to talk to you. And so ask what they want to accomplish and then paraphrase it. So say that back to them in other words. And it's actually great to write it on a board. If you're in a meeting room with a board, or if you're using some software, you could just put in, you know, item number 1, this is what you want to accomplish. Then you ask, is there anything else? And then they might say, yes, I'd like to do this. Okay, is there anything else? And then maybe they have a list of 5 things that they would like to accomplish in today's meeting. And then you can prioritize, well, how about if we do these 2 things, and then if we have time, we'll do this one, and then we'll do this one, and we're not going to have time for this one. Maybe we can schedule a second meeting to address that issue. So that's what we call the wanted conversation. Then another part of that is willing and able conversation. So if your client says, you know, I'd like to explain my project to you and for you to give me some advice on how I can collect better data. Then you think, all right, am I willing to do this? And the answer is usually yes. And am I able to do this? And the answer is hopefully yes. So you can kind of say yes, you know, sure, that sounds great. Maybe the client says, well, here, I've got this lot of data, and I'd like you to clean it all for me. And I need it done by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning before I meet with my boss. Then you think, well, am I able to clean all the data? Yeah, I'm probably able to do it, but am I willing to do it? No. And if you're not willing, then you need to have that conversation right up front. Say, well, I'm not willing to clean your entire data set for you, but we could, you know, spend some time today, you know, and go through some of the records. I'll clean, you know, the first things, and then we could write up some code, and you can clean the rest of it tonight or something like that. So make sure that for the client's wants that you're willing and able to do that. And if you're not willing and able, then you need to talk to the client and tell them. There are other aspects to the open, and you know, the power structure is not completely 100% right now. I'd say it's probably like 85%. We're still working on. So one thing that's not on this handout would be an idea. Well, and it's actually part of this work. Okay. So in an initial meeting with a client, a lot of the work that happens in the meeting is really figuring out more about the problem. You know, for like a second meeting, that work is actually just doing statistics, you know, or explaining statistics. But in an initial meeting, a lot of the work is to learn more about the project and their overall research goals. So one thing that's great to do is to really ask the question, why? Why does the client, you know, need these tables, needs whatever the client wants to do, like why? And so, you know, we get a lot of graduate students who are like, you know, can you help me analyze my survey data? Okay, so what are you trying to accomplish? Well, I'm trying to figure out what factors affect low-income students getting good grades in school. Okay, that's sort of an obvious answer to why. You can say, but it's still good to ask. And they might ask, so why are you interested in figuring out the factors for low-income students? You know, and they might say, well, I'm in charge of writing the policy for the state of Texas, and we're going to roll this out in 2 years, and so we need some evidence-based for what are effective teaching techniques or something. Asking the why will give you more information about how the research will be used. It can also, with a researcher, can really form a great collaborative bond with the researcher, because it's like this is their, in many cases, this is like their passion, and so you might ask them why they want to do this, and like, well, I came from a low-income neighborhood, and I saw we had terrible teachers, you know, and my neighbors weren't getting good education, but somehow, you know, I survived. I want to give back, you know, and so they will kind of share their passion with you, And that, for me, that actually really helps me get inspired to work on the project, to know why they care about this so much. So asking about why they're doing the project is great to build a collaborative relationship with the client. And then some other aspects of work are to make sure that you answer questions completely with no intentional omissions, be respectful of the client. If you don't know the answer to a question, say you don't know, but you'll be able to look it up, right? You don't just give an incorrect answer or try to bluff your way. Often, if a client asks me a question and I don't know the answer, I'll say, I don't immediately know the answer. Let me think about it. And while I'm thinking about it, let me ask you another question about some other like similar or related problem. And then sometimes, while we're discussing that, the solution to the first question will pop into my head. Or sometimes that second related question will actually give me information that I need to answer the first question. So that's, there's more about work. But then finally you come to the end of a meeting. And you should save between 10 and 15% of your meeting time for having the end, to wrap things up. Some students, I've never done this, but they've actually put like a timer and said during the time conversation, okay, so we have an hour, I have to leave for class right at 5 o'clock. I want to make sure we have enough time to wrap things up, so I'm going to set a timer for 4:50 just so we know we have enough time. And the clients really love this. They love being told, but they love knowing what the structure is of a meeting. And because our clients are often very, very scared of statistics, or they don't like it. The reason that they're in your office is because they hated statistics and they're not good at it, and so they need your help. Or sometimes they really like it, and then they just want an expert to verify what they've done. Okay, so for the end of a meeting, you should reserve enough time so you can perform all of the steps and finish on time. So a key step is to summarize the meeting and have an outline for the next steps. Who will do what by when to what standard? And what we've started to do in Lisa is to pull up a laptop and at the end of the meeting say, okay, so this is what we discussed, this is what we accomplished, what else, what else do you remember that we decided, and then have that email, and then this is what you're going to do by this time, this is what I'm going to do by this time. It's really easy to have an end summary if you've written the wants of the client on a whiteboard, because then you can say, okay, so number one, we did this. Was this satisfactory? Yes. Okay, number two, we did this. Now, do you understand that? And then they can say, no, not quite. Then you might have time to re-explain something or re-answer the question, or you might then say, well, yeah, or I didn't do a great job in number two. Let me think about it some more, and I'll email you, or let's schedule another meeting. But what we've done is when we put that in writing, it's really effective. Right as soon as during the meeting, done, and then the client can kind of correct any mistakes in writing. Also, it can save you a lot of time. If you're like, okay, so I'm going to be cleaning all the data. You might say, I'm going to clean all the data, and then the client's like, oh, no, actually, you don't have to do this. I've already done it. So before you start working on a lot of the project, it's great to make sure that this is actually what the client needs to have done. After the client has left, it's the last stage of the power structure, and it's the R for reflect. So you want to spend a few minutes thinking about what went well, what didn't go well. If a breakdown occurred, figure out what had to be present for that to have happened, and then figure out how you're going to change things in the future. So you learn from your experiences. If you're working with another student or another statistician, you can say, this was I really liked what you did about this. This was effective because of these reasons. Or you could have done this a little bit better. When you did this, the client started to cry. So maybe it's not a good idea to tell them that their data is worthless. In the future, you could do something else differently. And we do even more reflection in video coaching and feedback sessions, which will be the next handout. So before I move on to that, are there any questions about this power structure? Okay, so if a client, comes in with data and their experiment is all messed up, the situation is to figure out what it is that what are their research questions, okay, and then what data would be needed to answer those research questions. And it may be that they don't have the data to answer their research question. So then you say, well, unfortunately, you don't have the data to answer this question. You'd need this kind of data. However, if your question was this, you could answer these questions, these alternative questions, with the data that you've collected. So there's usually something that you can do with data that people have collected. They're not always worthless, right? Even if the experiment was poorly designed, there's something you can say. You can say, well, given these assumptions, this is the description of the data set. Just do some descriptive statistics or something. Other questions? And if there are any questions from people online, the chat box is open, and I can see the questions, of which there are none at the moment. So this is a handout about video coaching and feedback sessions, in which we use to improve our collaboration skills. So the basic fundamental idea is that we have a process, which is meeting with clients, it's doing statistics, it's applying statistics to solve real-world problems. And we want to improve that process. And so what we often say to clients is, well, go and collect some data and then analyze the data. And so we're doing that to ourselves. We collect data by videotaping our meetings with clients, and then we analyze the data in a small group setting. So since 2010, at least, we've done this 190 times. We've had 190 video coaching and feedback sessions. And so we've learned a lot of things. But our findings, I'm not going to get into our findings, but I will talk about 5 key ideas for video coaching and feedback sessions. So you could do this in a group, in a classroom. You could do this at home. You could share. You could, synchronously watch a video online of a teammate's meeting, and then have your comments even online. You could have a video coaching and feedback session online of a video recorded, Google Hangout or Skype meeting with a client. So this could all be done online. Key ideas are that the stars of the video, who I call the statistical collaborators, these are the statisticians, they watch the video and then take notes about what they see. And there are different things that you could do for the notes. So three possibilities are to actually make a timeline of your meeting, start from 0 to 60 minutes, and then identify when each aspect of the power structure happened. So, at this minute, I had the time conversation. At this minute, I had the wanted conversation. At this time, I clarified the research goals to the client, and she said that that was sort of correct. So then for the next 5 minutes, she re-explained her project, and then I summarized that, and at, minute 18 and 30 seconds, she said, exactly, exactly, that's my research. And so that's when I moved into the work. So you can kind of outline the power structure of the meeting. You could also just kind of write a narrative, just kind of notes at each time point along the meeting of what happened, and then identify interesting video segments for further review. So we had a video coaching feedback session on Wednesday, and one of the segments that the student wanted to review was a long silence, a long pause. So we watched it, and it was like 35 seconds of silence, and it did get a little bit awkward. It wasn't the record. We've had 2 minutes of silence in a video. That was awkward. But so during for this 35 seconds, we saw it, and then we talked about how to make the silence, the pause, less awkward, or how to avoid it, or how to recover from it when it does happen. So the first thing is that the stars of the video kind of watch their video. And after you've watched many, many, many videos, then you just end up sampling certain parts of the video. You don't have to watch all 60 minutes. It's a lot of data to take in. Then the second part is that the stars of the video recruit some peers to have the video coaching and feedback session. So this could be just one other friend. It could be your mom. It could be your roommate. And say, would you watch this with me? And so the point of the video coaching and feedback sessions are that these people are there to help you improve your statistical collaboration skills, and they will also learn some things to improve their own skills by watching what you did, and by thinking about how that reflects on their own statistical practice. So the third step is that the group, this video coaching and feedback session group, should watch samples of the video, not the whole 60 minutes, because that's just going to be too boring. So we use a statistical technique called sampling, where we're able to extract a lot of information, just from a sample. And we found that basically 1 hour session, we can, comfortably discuss like 3 separate 2-minute video clips, video segments. Then another key idea is to watch and analyze the video segments for specific things, because there's still, in that 2 minutes, there's so much coming out. So what we do is, one thing is, there are different ways to analyze the video segments. One is to really ask the stars, like, what should I be focusing on? What would be most useful for you to know about, to my opinion about? Another thing is to just look for the power structure. So you look at the beginning, and you look for the time conversation, the wanted conversation. Did they do a good job paraphrasing the wants? Did they summarize the overall research goals? Did they leave enough time at the end? Did they summarize what was accomplished? Does everybody know who will do what by when to what standard at the end of the meeting? Another thing that we do is we designate different people to look, what we call the 3 different lenses. We have an interpersonal lens, intrapersonal, and then technical. So one person, so maybe that these 4 people will look for the interpersonal dynamics. What does the relationship look like between the 2 statisticians, between the lead statistician and the client, between the client and the associate collaborator? The second thing is to look for intrapersonal attitudes and emotions. So to kind of to look for reactions of the client, like what do you think the client was thinking when the collaborator said that their data was useless and they had to throw it away. And then somebody can also, another, like a third of the group can look for the technical aspects of the project. So one thing was like, did the client understand the statistics that was being explained to them? You know, or was the information correct? And so you can have, in one clip of video, you can have 3 different groups of people looking for different things. You know, one's just the interpersonal, the intrapersonal, and technical. And so that helps, you know, by narrowing your own focus. So you're just analyzing part of the video. Then the 5th key idea is that each person in the video session, the video coaching and feedback session, should summarize what they learned from the session. And this has been really effective because it's like, you know, there are lots of lessons, and I talk, you know, and give lots of advice during the session. But then having students hear other students, what other students learned is really effective. And for students to verbalize it themselves of what they learned, you know, that makes them learn it even deeper. So each person should kind of, you know, go around and say what they learned from the meeting. Now, this is something that you can do at home. The first step is get the client's permission. So tell them that you're going to review the video in a small group to improve your statistical collaboration skills. About 95% of our clients are totally fine with being videoed. And for the 5% that aren't, you know, we turn off the video. We actually have an IRB approval form that we go through. But, you know, you can use your cell phone, you can use the webcam on your computer, whatever. It's easy to record meetings, and it's easy to record Skype meetings, Google Hangouts. Then, so do that. Like next time you're actually meeting with the client, you know, ask for permission, record it, then recruit a couple friends to help you improve your collaboration skills, you know, by looking at certain clips, certain segments of the video. And then let me know how it goes. So, right, when you do this, you know, send me an email. It's airvance@vt.edu. You can look me up online. It's, you know, Olympic athletes and professional athletes, even teachers now are starting to video their work, and they learn a lot from it. So it's time for statisticians to collect some data and analyze data about ourselves to improve our statistical practice. So questions about videoing? Yes? So audio is better than nothing. Video it's just richer data, it's more data. You can look for reactions. One thing is attention from the people. It's easier to watch a 2-minute a video clip and be engaged.
But the concern I have is there is a concern of the measurement environment itself may influence the process of taking the process of using it may bias the data, whereas an audio recorder must.
Okay, so the question would be, you know, maybe the video changes how the people will react. Yeah.
Is the value of what you're getting influenced by that? I wonder whether an audio might even be more useful.
Okay, so would audio be sufficient, and maybe it's even better? So I think audio is better than nothing. Video is better than audio because you can see reactions, you can see when the client like really doesn't understand and says, yeah, I understand, but doesn't really understand. And the thing about the video maybe changing the dynamics is you forget that the video's on. So what I challenge you is to do an audio recording of a meeting and then do a video recording and see if it's worth it. Just try it. So like pilot study. Okay. Okay. Right.
Not in terms of this collaboration context. It's a long story. We used to use recordings, I think. The concern would be whether these people behave differently when they know they're on camera.
Yeah, we have not found that anybody behaves differently. I mean, it's hard to tell exactly like what they would have done. But you forget that the camera's on. Okay, like the camera's watching, well, it's not actually, there's not, but there could be, like there's cameras everywhere. And you end up, I mean, sometimes the student will remember, oh, that the client, oh yeah, and then they sit up straight, a little bit straighter, and then they're more focused on practicing the power structure, and that's a great thing. It's not like we're not trying to, we're trying to use this as a tool for improving collaboration skills. Right.
What? No, you're okay.
So the first time you're nervous. Yeah.
Yeah. But then what about having other people?
I don't think that'd be any worse. I think it wouldn't be any worse than the audio of me talking. It's just,
Yeah, I hate listening to myself on audio.
yeah.
And yeah, I sound totally weird. And with the video recording, there's a lot that you pick up. So, I have a tendency to like move my chair when I'm nervous. And I'd noticed that on the video, but I wouldn't have noticed that in audio. There's a lot of nonverbal communication that goes on in a meeting. And back to what Bryce was saying, in a meeting, you have so much in your head. So there's this, this power structure, there's the QQQ process, there's having a good attitude of collaboration, and then there's all the statistics. And I think it really does push out the video from your head because you're focused on those other things. Yeah. Yeah, so It's an accepted part of our practice in Lisa. And so, yeah, people are nervous, but everybody does it, and it's fine. You know?
You know, I would expect there would be more pushback from the client.
So most of our clients are at the university, and they respect that we're trying to improve our skills. You know, and they know what it's like to be a student because many of them are students. Right. So most of our clients are students and also faculty members. And faculty members are even better. They're even more okay. Yeah. So there are some times where we've turned, it's like, okay, can you turn this off because you know, there's maybe some sensitive information that they're telling us. And so we do. Yeah. The thing is, you ask up front, are you okay with this? And we're going to use this in a small group. We're not going to put it on YouTube. You know, we're just going to show it and then discuss it in this for our internal purposes to make ourselves better. There was a question, Bryce?
I mean, when the client being great about it, I mean, I know of a lot of training centers where the psychologists, psychiatrists, they do video recording sessions for purpose. They get enough people who are okay with their psychology session. I don't think they'll have a problem.
Right. So psychologists have patients talking about their personal problems on being recorded, and a client talking about their research, you know, or their statistical problems, not as big of a hurdle to overcome.
Well, some clients probably their lack of knowledge in a certain area.
That's so some clients might be nervous that they might look stupid, but you know, it's like a small group. Like really, we have 5 or 6 people watching the video. It's not on YouTube. Yeah. So I get special permission from the clients if I show it to show it in a workshop. Yeah. I get permission to show some of these videos because it's like they're like whatever. And especially younger people, it's like whatever. So I just wanted to mention the fact that we have this Lisa 2020 program, just mentioning it. So it's our program to create a network of 20 statistical collaboration laboratories in developing countries by the year 2020. So we have a stat lab at Virginia Tech, and we train statisticians to be collaborative statisticians. We're training statisticians from developing countries to be collaborative statisticians, and then helping them start up stat labs in their universities or institutions in developing countries. And so, you know, this morning I had a seminar, and I think you guys here at Texas A&M have a chance to build up your internal stat lab, so you can help all of the researchers, you know, at Texas A&M. So you can help them advance science, right? Advance their research, and also it's a great experience for statistics graduate students to learn how to apply statistics to solve real-world problems. So I encourage you to, you know, put pressure on the right people wherever it is, you know, to get the structure in place so that you can have a stat lab, which will really, you know, help train your students and also help all these other researchers use statistics to advance their research. And now more questions. Any more questions? You know, it is past time. It's past 5 o'clock. I don't see any questions from the folks online, but I'm willing to, yeah, open discussion.
There's one question at lunch. Did you ever see a request for
So question, do we ever see requests for Bayesian analysis? Very few. unfortunately. I wish we had more. Actually, I only remember one request in the past 5 years. And then I really would like to be able to do more Bayesian analyses. But in most cases, like the answer is going to be the same. So I'm still waiting for the project where we do the Bayesian analysis. I would love for our stat lab to be the Bayesian stat lab. That'd be awesome.
What about bioinformatics?
Yeah, so bioinformatics, we have, gene expression data, that kind of thing. They come in, we can help in different aspects of the project. And then spatial statistics, we have some projects, spatial statistics. Yeah. It's kind of, so last year we had 349 projects from 66 departments around campus. So wide variety, and yeah, they do include spatial.
And Tech right now is what, 25,000?
Virginia Tech has about 25,000 students. So 20 undergrads, 5,000 grads. Yeah. Yeah. And the latest numbers were $495 million of sponsored projects. So we, in our statistics, yeah, so in the stat department at Virginia Tech, between, well, my 95% credible intervals between 50 and 80, but I think it's more like 60, 70 students. We have about 20 faculty members, half of what you guys have. And we do have an undergraduate program, and there are about 120 undergrads. Yeah. Yeah, it's really not that cold. So I've kept track of the number of times it snows. So it does snow, and it snows about 10 to 12 times per year. Some of the times it stays for a couple days. Zero snows here, right? Yeah. So if you want to see snow and experience it, come to Virginia Tech in the winter. I mean, it's not like Minnesota, right? We're not like really snowy. Yeah, but also, Ed, you were a student like back in the day. It's a lot warmer now. Seriously, such a thing as global warming. Like it used to be that the drill field, we had this big open space where the cadets would march, would be covered for months at a time with snow. And now, if it's covered in snow, everybody makes snowmen because it's going to be gone in a day or two. Yeah, it's not covered. And like that's an interesting thing where 30 years ago, there was snow for 2 months over this place, and now it's gone in 2 days. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.